here in sunny Long Beach, California for IANA Intermodal Expo, one of the best intermodal conferences of the year at one of the busiest ports in North America. How's your experience been so far?
The experience so far has been absolutely wonderful.
What's your experience been like at Expo?
It's been incredible.
So we will see you here at Intermodal Expo 2023.
Hey everyone, welcome to Thoughts and Coffee on this wonderful June Tuesday. First things first, you may notice I'm not Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm Eric Johnson. I'm normally the host of LogTech Live, the first and third Friday at 10 a.m. every month on the Let's Talk Supply Chain Network. But today I'm doing my best impersonation of Sarah. Thanks so much, Sarah, for having me guest host today. Sarah is actually en route, or she's already in Philadelphia for Home Delivery World, where she's going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff, cool stuff. So you'll hear all about that. But I'm really delighted. This is my first time on Thoughts and Coffee as guest. I believe I've been on as host. I believe I've been on as guest before, but we have lots of ground to cover. This goes super fast, so I'm going to try to get through everything we need to get through. First, I wanted to highlight a new podcast episode that Sarah did with Jonas Krumland, who's CEO of a really interesting technology company called Logword. That is up, as you can see on your screen right now. Definitely encourage you to listen to that. Coincidentally, I swear we did not plan this. My next episode of LogTech Live this Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, June 16th, I'm also having Jonas on. I don't know how this happened. We did not coordinate this. Maybe we should have coordinated, but in any case, listen to his conversation with Sarah and then tune in on Friday and hear a lot more. I have some inside information and some fun stuff to talk about with him that I'm guessing Sarah didn't cover. So you'll get all you need from Jonas and about Logword between those two episodes. Also, before we go any further, I wanted to say thank you to our sponsor, Fastenal. Organizations partner with Fastenal Company to simplify inventory management, illuminate data around inventory and usage, and reduce waste and risk in the supply chain. By relying on Fastenal's teams to manage daily needs and optimize supply chain performance, these organizations are able to focus finite resources on their fundamental purpose. And just go to fastenal.com/LTSC for more information. Okay, we have a great guest, by the way, as usual, Ashley Yentz. She's a VP of Supply Chain Strategy at Sleep Number, the mattress maker. She's going to be joining me in just a second. But just some upcoming events, as I mentioned. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, Eric, you're doing great.
You get to hear me talk about some upcoming events. Like I mentioned, Sarah's at Home Delivery World tomorrow and Thursday in Philadelphia. As I mentioned, my LogTech Live episode is on Friday. There's the Women in Supply Chain Forum, November 14th and 15th in Atlanta. I believe, Ashley, you're part of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So you can meet Ashley and talk about all sorts of interesting stuff there. And one last thing before we get into it, there's an awesome opportunity with Let's Talk Supply Chain Group to become the face and ambassador for Let's Talk Supply Chain TikTok to help showcase the fascinating world of supply chain through the power of TikTok. I'm sort of insulted that I wasn't consulted about the job first, but in any case, as someone without a TikTok account, probably a good choice to go with someone else.
Yeah, there's some really good supply chain TikTokers out there. So if anyone's interested, I think it would.
It's crazy how creative people have become. Actually,
yeah.
I'm sort of like amazed at like the power of these things put in even little kids. Like my 10-year-old makes some crazy stuff, not with TikTok, thankfully yet, but made some crazy stuff with his friends. So,
Awesome.
Ashley, it's so good to talk to you. I think we met first about a year ago at a supply chain conference in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And so give everyone a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name's Ashley Yentz. I work for Sleep Number. My average sleep IQ score is a 75. That's a measure of how well I sleep. I'm really in charge of everything that moves within our fulfillment chain, as well as supply chain strategy. So I have more of our material flow logistics lens when we talk today. And yeah, Sleep Number is a smart bed manufacturer. So we are a fully integrated company, which means we own the manufacturing, the distribution, and the retail of our smart beds. So if you haven't heard of us, check us out. We've come to market with some really cool technology. We kind of integrate technology into our bed that's a sense and do bed. So it's sensing what you're doing at night and trying to keep you asleep longer because sleep is really good for us and good for our well-being. So good company to be a part of.
Nothing against the bed. I'm in a hotel room right now. Nothing against the bed, which was super comfortable last night, but I got like the worst night of sleep in like 5 years last night. So your message
I need a Sleep Number
loud and clear in my head right now. So well, okay. So before we get talking about the interesting market out there, I wanted to say hello to a few people who are watching in today. Fatou, thank you for joining us bonjour from Edmonton. Josh, thanks so much for joining us from Seattle. Harish, great to have you with us all the way from Chennai, India. All right. So Ashley, as always, even though there things have calmed down a little bit, there's always something going on in our market. What are you seeing?
Oh, yeah.
What's sort of standing out to you right now?
Well, I think for us, we've gotten a lot of relief in our materials and our purchase services. So think of logistics and material spend. And our material spend is similar to how you would run like a fuel schedule on your logistics contracts is similar. We have an adjustable schedule based on what our commodities are doing in steel, chemicals, and some other inputs. So we've really capitalized on a lot of easing there. I think as we're planning the remainder of the year, we're expecting that to naturally tighten again, not tighten extremely, but just not continue to decrease the way it's been decreasing. And for a couple of reasons, right? We are starting to see more and more of this kind of labor disruption that always will tick up our market a little bit. So anytime there's a disruption in the flow of the global material, you're going to get higher rates somewhere somehow. So right now, Eric, something close to your heart in ports, we've got some labor union upset happening in California and on the West Coast in particular, that will probably have an impact on some of our international lanes, as well as some of our drayage lanes. So we're watching that very closely, as well as we've got, we kind of haven't fully recovered from this labor movement that I think was spurred a lot from COVID that we've seen in the rail system, as well as we're heading into summer where I know a lot of us are kind of watching the UPS negotiations in the States here. So we just have a lot of, and I know, globally, Europe went through some of those labor movements, especially in their parcel in recent history. So we still have some tension that's going on that will possibly hinder some of our capacity. And anytime capacity is hindered, right, we're going to see some more rate increases, specifically in our logistics lanes. So just watching that very closely, trying to mitigate that risk as best as we can through diversification. So it's never a dull moment here. We're there's always something that's going on, and the global economy is definitely impacted by supply chain. So we've got to watch that carefully.
Yeah, you mentioned that what's going on the West Coast ports right now.
Yeah,
we've seen major disruption in the Pacific Northwest, somewhat less, but still more impactful because of the size of Southern California ports.
Yeah,
and just I look at this through the lens of if you're a shipper, you've been sort of like watching this long simmering thing happen for now close to a year since the
Yeah.
contract expired, sort of hoping, waiting for some resolution. And now instead of it getting resolved, it seems like it's flaring up to the point where we might be going down the territory of strike, lockout potentially. So how does that impact kind of things, especially since all indicators like freight volume,
Yeah.
economic stuff is all sort of a little bit down, gave us a chance to kind of pause, catch our breath, but maybe not.
Yeah. Well, and like we experienced in COVID, right? Immediately when we started seeing backups at the port, a lot of our freight was trying to be routed around it, but then we had backups everywhere else. So this could be, a disruption that lasts for a little bit, depending on how long. What are we talking here? Which will obviously put a lot of pressure on lead times and capacity. So
Yeah.
we are fortunate where we have a mostly domestic supply chain. So we have a few components we're watching closely to make sure that disruption doesn't go too far out. But like a lot of shippers, we also are heavy in inventory. That happened after COVID. So we have a little more breathing room, which is helpful when something like this happens. But something to definitely consider with where you're coming in and how you're managing your freight.
How in your particular case, how much is the sort of cooling of the economy, whether it's inflation related, or just we all like kind of bought these big ticket items during
Yes.
COVID? And how correlated are you to sort of that, and also just sort of obviously interest rates mean less people changing homes and
Yep.
and refurbishing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the mattress industry often follows housing turnover. So when anyone is changing houses, that's a good indicator to watch. We at Sleep Number often watch consumer sentiment. Consumer sentiment has really been hovering kind of around this all-time low. Our industry, because of our average ticket price, we're a little bit higher than most mattress companies, or we don't have as a range of ticket places to come in with our product. We tend to follow that curve very quickly. So we have definitely been impacted by you can call it inflationary pressures or whatever. But if you even just look at your own finances, right, my household's spending more on personal items, groceries, things that we weren't spending a lot on.
Car insurance. Car insurance
Yeah,
is up 20%, right?
yeah,
Like that
car
means you have
insurance.
a little bit less each month, right?
Yes, even our property taxes are up quite a bit due to our house value going way up during COVID. So there's just a lot that's putting pressure on households, which is making our demand ease a bit. I would say what's interesting in the mattress industry is we call them major sales events. So as a consumer, most consumers know that you can get a good price mattress on Memorial Day, Labor Day, are the two big days for us. We have other things kind of sprinkled in there, some after Thanksgiving sales, all of that. But those are our two big MSEs. And what we're seeing now is COVID, we were seeing a lot of demand all the time. People were waiting for those MSE periods, but now the consumer has really settled back into their traditional buying patterns, and we're seeing lower times between MSCs and then high times during those major sales events, which, as you can imagine, when you think about like the contracting, just what we're doing from a volume perspective, to have to kind of ramp up to high volumes in 2 times a year is very difficult to kind of revert back to. So the demand patterns are interesting to watch the consumer. We definitely have a value-driven consumer as well, which is something we're playing with. And then another pressure in our business is that financing pressure. As rates go up, that puts pressure on us as a lot of families are still financing their purchases. So so we're watching that very closely and trying to tie our financing, meet our competitors' financing deals as well.
And I still don't think people realize they spend up to a third, if not more, of their life in their bed. So
Absolutely.
They don't think about it from that perspective.
Yeah, it's as important as it's more important than your car almost, honestly, for your health and well-being. So it's an important purchase. It shouldn't be taken lightly. So if you need one, be planning for a good bed.
Yep. So there's a few stories that I wanted to talk to you about, but before we do that, I failed to mention another cool thing about Let's Talk Supply Chain. A new announcement just came out this week about a partnership between Let's Talk Supply Chain and Supply and Demand Chain. And these two groups, really cool stuff happening. So keep an eye out for this partnership in relation to women in supply chain, which we mentioned earlier. Lots of interesting stuff to come on this. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But just wanted to highlight that is a brand new partnership to be aware of. So more to come for sure. Also wanted to highlight a weekly poll that Let's Talk Supply Chain did. And let's bring that up right now. So salespeople, do you understand what your marketing team does? And before Ashley, you jump in on this, I just wanted to say that it's really interesting. I'm a journalist when I'm not hosting shows on Let's Talk Supply Chain. And I talk to a lot of marketing people. Sometimes I talk to salespeople, but it's way more common that I talk to marketing people who want to tell me about how great their 3PL is or their software is. And it's very clear, now I've been doing this a long time, it's very clear when that marketing person intrinsically understands what their company is selling, and it's very clear when they're really good at marketing, but they don't really understand the core of what their company is.
Yeah.
And that's it. In one conversation, I can tell that. And the ones that do understand that have such a good appreciation of how to tell their story to me in a way that the people who are really good at like the marketing principles but don't get the connection do. So I'll leave it at that. Ashley, I'm interested in your thoughts.
Yeah. I do. Well, I don't work in sales or marketing, but I do know what both teams do. And I would say is what's interesting, just to kind of put it, I think the lens of this, Sarah's in this mode of how do I call all my leads, right? So I think that's probably why she posted it. But for me, being a shipper, right now, what we're trying to evaluate is how does our new campaign, we have a great new marketing campaign, driving the right behaviors to get the leads to the door. When we get leads to the door, we often are converting them at a pretty high pace. So their job is really to get people into the pipeline at some level, wherever that pipeline is for your business. And then the sales team is really there to then take that lead and get them to the finish line. So that's really what in marketing is. They have to take your value proposition and match that with the right consumer, which is very difficult. You have to find where those consumers are when they're trying to learn about that story, which is obviously why they're, looking at articles and media and how we get in front of people at the right time. So if you are in sales and you don't know what your marketing team does and vice versa, you guys should really get together and learn from each other.
Maybe have a Zoom call. Talk about what you do, right? Yeah, it seems kind of important. It's also, this poll is super interesting too, because, I think companies have gotten a lot more sophisticated about it now, but you used to always hear like sales and marketing department. And then you talk to people in those, and they're not the same, and they shouldn't be lumped in. They're obviously connected, but you need to have excellence in both sides. And to the point of this poll, like, please understand what each other do.
So,
all right. So
you're good, Eric. Your internet is a little choppy.
It wouldn't be me without bad internet, no matter where I travel. I'm in a hotel room in Charleston right now, but it's still bad internet just follows me around like a storm cloud.
We're better now.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, let's move on. We have a few articles that we wanted to discuss. Really interesting stuff as usual. So first article, Puma expands its sustainability policies following the demands of Gen Z. Okay. Do we need to define? I'm getting so old now, I can't even remember what Gen X, Y. I'm at X. I don't know what millennials and Z. Where does the cutoff? I think my wife, who's 40, well, I want to 81. She's like a geriatric millennial, I think is what they call it, which is a terrible name for it. But So
I don't know where
Anyway,
Gen Z starts, but they're the generation behind millennials. You know,
Yep.
remember when the millennials were the problem? Now Gen Zers are the ruckus group. So
right.
so what this article is really talking about, it's so interesting, is really that Gen Z, so Puma started listening to their, and if you can imagine, Gen Z is probably very important to Puma. Gen Z isn't, I don't want to say important, but not necessarily who we're selling to in my industry right now, but they're very interesting in the way that they talk about this. Like Gen Z basically said, Puma, we're interested in how we do better for the world. We're interested in how your supply chain or your practices are impacting the stakeholders around it. And we don't understand how you're talking about these improvements. So one thing that I got out of this article is, how are we talking about how we're going after sustainability, and how are we making it approachable to the consumer so that they fully understand it and can grasp the benefit of your changes. So there was I forget where I was talking about this, but there was a conversation going on where it's like, all these corporations technically have made these pledges, but have greenhouse gas emissions gone down? No. We're not seeing real results when it comes to some of these commitments from corporations. So
Yeah. It's I did a webcast a couple weeks ago, looking at kind of like how supply chain visibility factors into decarbonization efforts. And one of the hosts actually brought up this point. They're based in Europe, and they brought up this point about how I think it's in France, there's a label, on the label there you get a score about how sort of decarbonization sensitive that product is. And because I think there's a couple different elements here, is like, how do you grade a company based on its pledges, right? Especially when there's not a regulatory mandate for them to comply with.
Right.
And then B, how does the consumer put in context whatever a single company is doing to reduce its own carbon footprint? Like, you often hear, oh, we reduced our footprint by 70,000 metric tons of carbon.
Right.
I'm like, that sounds like a lot, but it may not be anything at all. It may not be significant because I don't have a frame of reference for it.
Right.
So there's all these things that need to happen outside of companies just pledging things to help us understand what that pledge means, and whether they're actually, doing what they said they were setting out to do.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's the job of the company to really be ahead of what a stakeholder. So we often talk about shareholders. When I talk about stakeholders, it's the people that are impacted by your company in some way, whether it's in the local communities, et cetera. And it's the job of the corporation to really be in front of that and understanding how we're impacting those people. So I like this. I like this drive that, like, it needs to be simpler. It needs to be straightforward. We need to see real results. I believe this is Gen Z really just holding us accountable to what we need to do. So it's great.
I just bought a pair of Adidas, and I noticed that it was 50% from recycled materials. So, whatever that means, it's better than 0%. It's better than 40%. So
yeah, we're actually looking at new technology that's over in Europe that it's a labeling technology that any piece of fabric, so we think of our fabric or any piece of whatever, there's a label on it that anyone can QR code and understand how to reuse that material. Like, what is it made of, right? Dispose of it properly, et cetera, which is a really interesting technology that's coming in the market in our space, because we're really focused on how do we not waste, how do we not put things in landfill, and how do we reuse as much as possible in the right context in our bed. So
yeah, that's a huge, no one wants a used bed, right? Like, so I would imagine that's a massive problem for your industry, right? So,
yes, and like in the US particularly, we have a lot of compliance issues around fire. So how ignitable is your bed? And we have to do a lot of testing around that. And there's some things done in Europe where they're actually taking excess foam, crumpling it up, and reusing a mix of that for one of the foam layers in their beds. I don't know that we could get away with that due to our fire compliance. So there's just things that we're digging into that make it more complex. but it's definitely an intention. And we are running out of time, Eric, so we got to move on.
I know. We have 2 more stories to get through. Okay, so quickly, next story. Etihad announced in May they're launching a set of AI-powered solutions. So AI is everywhere. I've already sort of like become a little bit numb
I know.
to some of it, especially in my role where I'm covering technology all the time. You can imagine all the different pitches I get. How do you, as a potential consumer of the services, if not the direct solution technology, how do you sort of think about these things?
So AI is very intriguing, and it's intriguing for me more from a team member perspective. Supply chain is very complex, and we need to make decisions very quickly. And the more we can get the same decisions kind of automated, and this goes back to maybe machine learning before it goes to AI, the better. The less we'll need people interaction. So I really want my people to be focused on what I call the smart work, not the day-to-day button pushing. And AI and some other solutions can help me with that. What's interesting about AI and what we're focused on is really the data enablement. So in this article, they talk a little bit about some of the data that they are mining for AI to make that decision. And we at Sleep Number, as probably many companies have, sometimes have disparate systems. Data isn't accessible as we want. We don't have the systems talking in the right way. So I'm really focused right now on laying that bedrock from an end-to-end fulfillment stream around data. So how do we make sure our data is available when we want it, and we can see the right things so that we can leverage something like AI or machine learning as we layer in some of those technologies through different partners, right? I don't know that we'll have a specific AI whatever, but we'll probably, end up interacting with a TMS that has AI integration. We probably will be interacting with some type of demand planning AI software. So we need to make sure that the data is in the right spot so the AI is learning the right things, because they're just as good as the data that's being fed to them. So that's kind of what we're focused on. I'm excited about the potentials in the future, but sure, it's one of those rocky roads where it's like, how good is this? How much, where is this going to take us? But I think I'm looking forward to the future with AI. We'll see. There's probably some risks to it as well, but
I think there's a lot of power in AI from a perspective of people who know how to harness that power. I think it's overstated how much impact it's going to have on like the average person.
Yes.
And it's maybe understated on how much impact it has on someone who knows what they're doing from like a programming and engineering perspective. So that's where I'm sort of looking for things to just move faster in the background.
Yeah.
And not be very observable to us as users. So, but that's hard to measure. So, but
it is.
Nonetheless. Okay, so we have 2 minutes. You talked about labor in the context of logistics challenges, but there's this whole bigger thing going on in the U.S., especially around a changing, kind of in the job market, which has been definitely an employees market the last few years. What are you seeing? There's a story here about how difficult it is for people in the white collar world to land jobs now. What are you seeing?
Yeah, we are definitely, I did huddle, I have to give her a shout out with my HR business partner, Kate Lilligren, before this to kind of make sure I was confirming this. But we are seeing a little bit of a flip in certain jobs and value streams in our organization where it's becoming more of a market for the employer. So that's, that is like clearly this article is speaking in realness here. What's interesting though is like our Fed's going to meet today, and our labor market continues to stay pretty strong. So it must just be popping up in certain areas. We still have struggle finding some of our really specialized talent. Think like some accounting and finance talent, things like that. But we are definitely seeing a slow shift here, which is interesting, and will also probably play into how our Fed is managing our rates in the future. So I'm certain it's hard out there. I apologize to anyone that's in this position, but keep working your leads, keep doing what you're doing. But yeah, it's definitely flipping in favor of the employer, which is hard.
Yeah, the jobs are out there, but it's not like such a frothy market for job seekers as it was a few months ago, for sure. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, Ashley, this has been too fast. I'm used to my 45-minute show. This has been awesome to talk to you, and look forward to talking more in the future, for sure. Thank you all for suffering through me as guest host today. I really appreciate Sarah for letting me do this. This was super fun, and hopefully she'll have me back. She is going to be back next week with Patrick Lowe from Tracking. That's her guest next week on Thoughts and Coffee. Same time, same place. And once again, I'll be with you on Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. If you can join me, where Jonas Krumlin CEO of Logos is joining me. So yes. Ashley, thanks so much. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Nicole, for being the best producer in the world. And thank you all for tuning in. Sorry if I didn't get to your questions. I know there were a bunch of comments, but we had too much to get to. So.
We'll get to them. We'll get to them on LinkedIn. We'll reply.
That's right. Yeah. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.